Thank you all for coming out.
How's everyone doing tonight? A lot of energy in here. I like it. My name is Rob Moynihan. I'm with TV Guide Magazine, and I'd like to welcome Jeremy Sisto to the SAG Foundation conversation.
Thank you.
So they all just watched the finale, I think it was, of last season, Suburgatory. And, we've known you on our TV for a while. You're on 6 Feet Under, you were on Law & Order, and now you're on a half-hour comedy. So can you kind of talk about your decision to go into comedy, especially with this show when you first signed on to it?
Well, let me see. So Law & Order ended, and then I did a play. I was living in New York, and I had a girl, babe, daughter, and it was just getting to the end of pilot season, and I was offered one thing. It was a procedural, and I was really procedurals aren't shows that I tend to watch, so I was kind of hoping to get any job again, but I was kind of hoping if I had a choice to not be on procedural. But I did get offered one procedural, and I turned it down, and I mean, whenever I don't turn down a lot of things because I don't come for money, and it's like anyone offers me money and a job, I'm like, okay, let's do this. But this was towards the end of pilot season, and they cast them so strangely, like the leads. Sometimes they cast 2 days before they start shooting, and so that's what happened on this one. I got the script on probably a Friday or something, or I think it was a Thursday, and my wife and I was trying to tell her, like, because she's only known me when I was working, and I was trying to tell her I might not work again. Like, you have to understand how this works because you've only been involved in a little while. I might not work again. Like, that could, that show ended, and then you just so we were kind of going through the growing pains of trying to teach her that, and then and this came along, and it's hard to tell when you get these scripts. They're 30 pages. You don't know what the music's going to be. You don't know how loud the voiceover is going to be, or the tone, or how it's going to look. It's really hard to tell what it's going to be. For me, I mean, some people, I think, have a better idea. So I read it, and I thought it was fine. It was cute, I guess. But I didn't really have one reaction one way or the other. I couldn't tell, It's anyway. So I talked to the Emily, the creator, and she was nice. She had kids. She had a young kid too, which was good. She's like, listen, I've got a family, and that's important. I mean, it is important to her, but she's like such a workaholic, and she's kind of not sure. But she's like, it's important that we spend time with our families, and so that sounded right. And I was very happy to get a comedy because I couldn't really get a comedy before that. It was before Law & Order. I tested for a comedy that was directed by Barry Levinson and was the producers of a show I was on called Kidnapped, and that were big fans of mine. We were friends, and they said, like, come down and try to be funny, and I wasn't, and I didn't get it, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get into comedy. So I was very happy to get a comedy, but I couldn't really tell from the script exactly what kind of a comedy it was. I personally like the Office kind of for network TV. I like the sort of, more like awkward moments-y kind of stuff. And I think this is probably more on the 30 Rock type of, the writing being really quick and stuff. But no, I couldn't really tell. So anyway, I was happy to get a comedy. I was happy to get a job, and I didn't want to move back to LA. But
here you are.
Decided to do it, and and it worked out better than I had hoped.
So you said that you tested for a comedy before, but you weren't funny, and now here you are 3 years into a comedy. What changed between those years? What was your audition process like for Suburgatory?
They just offered it to me. If I had to audition, I wouldn't have gotten it because the pressure of being funny on command like that in an audition room is like, it's very difficult to do. I mean, some people it's not. Maybe comedians, stand-up comedians or whatever, but for me it was so I definitely wouldn't. So it was a real gift or a strike of luck that they were doing this show, and they were kind of looking for two actors in the leads that didn't necessarily come from comedy, and if that wasn't the case, they would have probably made me read, and then I probably wouldn't have gotten that. So it's definitely like all things in this business, it's just so many random things have to line up for it. I'm working on a little film that I've been developing for a couple of years, and we're casting now, and it's just amazing the little teeny things that come up that don't say, oh, that person's not going to get this role. It has nothing to do with who they are, So anyway, so in this thing, things lined up that.
So, as a father yourself, you read this role of George, this guy raising his daughter. Was there something specific about this character that really resonated with you in your personal life? I have
2 kids now, so I'm much less neurotic about my second kid as one becomes. But the first kid is. I was just always freaked out. Is she in enough classes? Is she getting everything she needs? Sort of just neurotic about that. And obviously that was the premise of the show, is that a dad freaks out that his daughter's on the wrong path and switches up everything and does something huge to change it. So I think that dynamic of acting out of love in a way that could actually go against what you're going for, what you actually want, was something I was, living at the time. So it was probably that.
Yeah. And Chatwin, the town itself, is a really big character in the show too. Did you have any experience growing up in the suburbs or around suburbanites?
Not the upper class suburbs like that. I mean, not much. There's sort of more middle lower class suburbs. I had some times with my grandmother lived, my grandparents lived in kind of where all the houses were the same, and it was a little bit depressing. And then the first girl I ever kissed was a suburbanite, is what we called them, because we lived in the city, but that was a scary kind of suburbs to where it was.
No country clubs or.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly the country club thing. So I guess I didn't really have a connection to this, but I did. I went to a high school. I got financial aid to this private school in Chicago that had really rich kids in it. And the parents were very, wealthy, and they had all the right clothes and fancy cars and stuff like that. And so there was, and I always felt completely out of the loop. I was happy to be there. They had couches in the hallways and stuff. I was like, this is great. But I didn't feel, I felt very different than everyone there, because my life had been very different. So I guess there's a connection there too.
Can you talk a little about the George-Tessa relationship, I guess, maybe from the pilot to where we are now at the end of season 2? You guys have really evolved this father-daughter relationship, and now it seems that it's really kind of on a rocky path. Do you know kind of, what's in store for them coming up? Do you know what do you think is going to happen with George and Tessa?
I'm not exactly sure. I know that this season was a respite from their conflict. In the beginning of the season, he said, "I'm not going to get in your business," and then he didn't really. And I think that was a bit of a surprise for both. And then the season ended with, that dynamic imploding on them. Him being so out of her business that he was making decisions, without her involved. And so I think the dynamic now is, from what I hear vaguely through Emily, is that, they come back to the suburbs. They say, let's live this year out. We spent a year. We got caught up in this life. We both got caught in relationships that we didn't expect we would, and we kind of lost each other. So let's just live this year out. So we'll stay together, and it's us against them, and let's just get through it. And so at least that's kind of where it's starting out, which is much more like the initial concept. As far as where it's going to go from there, I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, you work with Jane a lot, and in a lot of scenes. The majority of your scenes are you and Jane. This is one of Jane's first starring role, I think, in a show. So do you give her advice? Does she ask you for advice? What advice do you give, like, a young actress or a new actress just starting out? And do you learn anything from her in the process as well?
I did find myself giving her advice early in the first year, which I don't know why I would do it. It wasn't even good advice. It was just like... It was just, I don't know, I felt like I had to or something, and...
What did you tell her?
You know, I just wanted to see her more and more comfortable with asking for, doing what she wanted, you know, as an actress, and, you know, because young actors are often kind of pushed around a bit because they're new and they're just happy to be there, and I knew she would kind of gather her strength, but I was just... I was kind of in support of that, and we talk about that, and she, yeah, and so now I don't feel, now I feel like I don't have anything else to offer, but it is definitely weird to watch a person go through that early career, and sometimes I do have to bite my tongue in terms of, I don't want to burst her bubble with my cynicism or my, like, you know, lack. You know, I don't have a lot of stars in my eyes about the business and about, you know, it's just part of my life now, and so I definitely have to restrain myself from kind of, you know, having that rub off on her.
Yeah. Does working with her or any of the other young actors influence your work and change your ways?
Yeah, always. I feel like I'm always kind of like that, and no matter who I'm working with, I tend to sort of adapt or adopt some sense of how they approach it, unless it's completely different. And no, with Jane, with the younger side, yeah. But I guess,
do you learn anything from them, from working with them?
Yeah, Jane's great. I mean, they're all great. Jane's great. I don't know if I learn anything exactly, but I definitely I'm often sort of acknowledging in my head that she's got a special gift. That's cool. That's, you know, that I feel lucky to have around. You know, sometimes it's a reminder. She's very real. You know, she also can be very silly and goofy and like big but her go-to most of the time is kind of very real, and on a show like this, there's a tendency to be big and broad, and she's always kind of keeping it, not always, sometimes she gets crazy intentionally, but most of the time she has a tendency to really ground her reactions and make them really real, and so I think sometimes she reminds me of that, you know. I think that's our job to each other, is to remind each other to bring it back down when we get too carried away with the chat swin of it all.
Well, it's an easy show to get carried away with because you guys, you switch the tones so quickly. It can be so grounded and it can be so goofy, which as an actor, it's probably fun to explore those two extremes, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was definitely sort of worried about him being too much of the straight man forever, and fortunately, very early on, Emily was able to find ways that both my character and Jane's character loses their sense of self-awareness and becomes, you know, a wacky. My character gets kind of obsessed with a certain goal, and he loses himself, and I guess that was inherent in the concept and the fact that he moves his family to Chatsworth in the first place. So it became something that I think I would probably be frustrated if every episode was like me just rolling my eyes at people, and there are certain episodes that are like that, and I love it. Yeah. But the fact that it's mixed in with me becoming a little loopy, and I think it's good.
Well, you got really loopy this season in the George Dallas relationship because it's something they'd been teasing since early season 1. I think this romantic connection between the two characters, but you guys really went all out in season 2. I mean, she was hanging from the ceiling in the bedroom, and George kind of went along with it, though. Were you surprised at how fast that relationship was moving? Or did you enjoy playing that aspect of George?
Yeah, I think George is, I think he makes, what's nice is that when you're on something where the character makes sense to the writers, it's usually not complicated, especially with something like this. It's simple. He got caught up in the idea of making this sort of not unrealistic, but kind of unique relationship work. And so as the challenges started to unfold, it just made him more and more committed. As the red flags started to appear, it just made him more and more determined to ignore them and to be okay with the relationship he was in. And then it was Dallas that was kind of the speaker of truth at the end. And so yeah, I thought it was fun, and I also just. Cheryl is she makes me laugh as this character so much, and she makes George laugh as this character so much. He really likes who she is, even though it's not he doesn't exactly relate to her. So it's kind of weird to be in a relationship with someone that you really like and you think is really funny, but you just don't. They're kind of from a different planet too. So yeah, it was fun. It was fun to explore. And I don't know what it's going to be next year. But
are you sad that they broke up?
No, I'm not. I mean, they might get back together. I can see it being I can see them growing old together. I can see it being a relationship, but it happened really fast. It happened on the tails of her marriage breaking up. It happened, I think, before it was ready to happen. And so, if we're fortunate enough to have the show continue on, I think it's very possible that we'll see them back together again, maybe. But I for now it was just not the right time for either of them really to.
But there still could be like a soulmate connection between them at some point.
Yeah, I mean maybe if not soulmate, then just someone they want to be with. They enjoy each other's company at the end of the day. I mean. It's just, I don't think ever going to be like that romantic kind of love that he grew up in, sort of urban, sort of grunge world, or, emo land, or, where, you see each other and you're like, I've always known you. It's never going to be like that because she's always going to be, kind of out of her mind in his eyes, but in a good way. I mean, so I can see it working, but my grandfather, who was just one of my heroes, and as a person was just a sweet guy. He would have loved Dallas. That was after my grandmother died. He dated a bunch of all the widows, all his friends' widows. He'd have a list of them, all the widows. Put them in order of preference. It was weird. He sounds awful, but he wasn't. He was amazing. And he would have loved Dallas. So I always think of that. Like he kind of. I don't know. I can see why. I can see maybe it's something to do with that connection that I can see why George, this guy that I relate to, I can see him being with her.
Interesting. Well, now that George and Tessa are kind of drifting apart, we saw a little hint of George and Dalia, maybe Dalia filling that void of Tessa's daughter. What do you think about that connection and that relationship there? What do you think George is really thinking about? Dalia, his relationship with Dalia, especially after breaking up with Dallas.
Yeah, I don't think he's looking for a replacement for Tessa. I think he feels for her, and I think she's got a rough road ahead of her, and it's a really interesting kind of character. Carly's great, and the character is so odd, and but also like they just put in so much. Some of the stuff was really kind of real and sad. Her need of a father and kind of her desperation to be close to her the stepmom that she never met, and so I really like the character. It's definitely like it's a challenging one though, because I mean it's hard to feel for exactly, but yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I don't think George and Dalia are going to have like an intense, maybe, but I don't think they're going to have an intense relationship. But I'm definitely interested to see where Dalia goes, and I hope that she grows positively. She could get really bad though. I mean, I could maybe see her end up being like some criminal. I don't know. Like, it could go really dark.
She has a little, dark streak in her, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, another interesting relationship in your character over the last 2 seasons has been with George and Noah. And it was just announced, actually, that Alan would not be coming back to the show for next season. So how do you think that Noah void will affect George going forward? Because that's been his guy. I mean, it's been his really solid guy friend in this crazy town of Chatsworth.
Yeah, well, hopefully he will be back. You know, from what I hear, he'll be back for some episodes. It was just they had to cut our budget because we were sort of on the bubble of being picked up again, and so there just had to be a couple of kind of cuts in order to be able to get the show in. So, but that's going to be a big deal. I mean, Alan's one of the best actors. I know he's so much fun to watch. He's so much fun to work with, and he offers so much to the show. So it's definitely going to be a miss to the show. But in regards to George and Tessa's storyline of feeling alone in a world of suburbia, it only makes them feel more excluded if he doesn't have his friend around. So
Right. We touched on this a little bit before, but the show has made you do some incredibly wacky things and just crazy, crazy situations. Has there been anything that you said, like, no, absolutely, I'm not going to do this, and yet they put it in there anyway?
I think I said yes to everything. Yeah, I don't think you kind of just have to, because you can't trust your instincts anymore. It teaches you to just not trust your instincts and be like, all right. I mean, fortunately, I like Emily's. I think Emily's a great creative person, and I'm very aware that everyone's got different opinions, different taste, and so I'm fine with doing something that I don't particularly like. I try to do things that I like all right, but I'm also totally fine with the fact that some things I really don't like and some people love. So I try not to just judge it too much. If I get into a place too much of that. But I do have moments of feel like part of the way through, it was more based on how wacky Cheryl was. I was freaking out a little bit about, is it believable that George is still interested in this girl? And, so there's definitely questions that come up that I've tried to keep in mind the audience relating to my character. But as far as goofy, making myself look like an ass they pretty much they make you relax and do it.
Would you have a craziest moment, anything that comes off the top of your head, where just like the craziest getup or costume or situation that they put you in so far?
Well, right off the bat, they had the Halloween one, and I was like, I wonder if they're gonna make me shave off my goatee. I was like, if they're gonna make me shave off my goatee, then I'm gonna have to like wear a fake goatee, and which I had to do, and the fake goatee was not great, and the episode didn't quite hit as well as we would have hoped for the amount of effort that went into it, but that, and then to do like this the whole thing was just a little bit like, I'll do it, I'll try my best, and then it just kind of felt a little dead, but that's the kind of risks you have to take, and I think when people are watching a comedy like this, they kind of forgive some mishits, some whiffs.
Did you have to study Alan to do a Noah impression? Did you have
I don't know. I'm just not great at impressions, really, in general. So I tried. Yeah, I had him record my lines that I was imitating him into a tape recorder, but they cut out most of them. I think I seemed really crazy doing his voice, the way I did it with my weird low voice. It was just. The whole thing was a little off. Yeah.
Well, one of my other favorite episodes this season was the Sheila's Pets episode when you joined a rock band with Anna and Chris. Were you actually playing? Do you actually play?
I do play, yes. Yes, I have a show on Viper Room June 18th if anyone wants to come. But yeah. So this was a very musical season. That was fun. I definitely enjoyed that. But no, our composer played the guitar, and I just pretended to play what he was playing for that.
Sheila's Pet's going to come back. You guys lobbying Emily to get the band back together?
I know, man. It's I know it was a fan favorite, so maybe so. I think it was a fun story. I really met the Alan and Chris and myself, that George, Noah, and Fred were a funny trio, and I hope there's more stuff with those three.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Emily and the writers, how much of what you guys do is improv, or is it all written?
It's all written. We started out kind of like, and Alan was kind of more than anyone. He would do he would write like 3 or 4 options, and after he'd get scripted ones, then he would do a couple of options. But mainly it's scripted. You know, we started in the beginning kind of with a bit more of a loose feel. As long as you've got one of the scripted ones, then you could go off a little bit. But just on a TV show, you just feel like, all right, these people have families, and it's just not that. It's not that show. Like it's a show where the writing, I think, is very just prevalent. You know, it's like 30 Rock. You are with the writers of the show as well as the characters, and so it doesn't lend itself, I don't think, for too much improvisation.
Even with like Cheryl and Anna and Chris, I mean, these are like, you know, trained improv actors. Have you honed your improv skills being around them?
No, you know, they don't really improv. It's, you know, it's kind of not that they can't. They're obviously amazing at it, but it's just not that show. So unfortunately, I haven't been able to kind of swim in that pool with them and learn or kind of get better or worse or whatever. But I do. This movie that I'm going to do. But it's weird. Improv is weird. You sometimes. Anyway, yeah.
What's the pace of your show like? I mean, you're a 22 episode a season comedy on network television. I mean, what do you get from script to when you start production? Do they just keeping you go the entire time?
Yeah, it's pretty. We shoot 5-day weeks, and so it's back to back. Last season we had a couple more hiatuses for a week, but it was, yeah. I mean, they shoot a lot. They tend to. You think because it's a half hour, the hours would be less, and that was kind of what was told when I signed on. But they use what they. I mean, it's not the dramas where it's like 17 hours, and you're some of those shows you're there until Friday night at 6 a.m. or whatever, and it's not like that. So it's 12-hour days, you know.
Well, speaking of the dramas, I was curious about, because you've done so many dramas before, especially with Law and Order. Coming into Law and Order so late in the series run, what was that like? Was that an easy integration? Because that was such a well-oiled machine, I can imagine by then, with the whole procedural nature to it.
Yeah, it was. I think I probably went through a kind of initiation process that all the actors went through on that show, where they start off and the showrunner says, "Oh, we're going to make your character really interesting, and we're going to hear about your backstory," and then by the 3rd episode, you realize all that means is like every 3 episodes they'll say, "I have a backstory," and then it's back to the case. You know, it's like there's nothing more than that, and so you get a little frustrated, and you're like, "Hey, do you want to do more backstory? I mean, I feel like because you feel like, are you sure I'm earning my money? I feel like you should give me a little something else besides asking where you were on Tuesday," and you know, and they're like, "No, you're doing great. You're fine. Don't worry. Back off." And you're like, "Oh, okay, I guess I'll back off." And then you just get in the routine of it and get to sort of enjoy that, putting on the trench coats and walking onto the crime scenes, and it's fun. But you can't look at it in the same way as you look at the other things.
Right. Do you have a preference of the drama schedule versus the comedy schedule? Is there one that you enjoy more?
Comedy schedule is better. It's just less pages.
Yeah. And then with 6 Feet Under too, that was a heavy role with Billy. And how was it to portray that guy? I mean, did you take him home with you after the show? Because that's something I feel like would stick with most actors.
Well, I didn't really have like a home to take it to. I was single, and so I always thought, no, I don't do that. It doesn't matter to me. But then once I had my kid, I did it. My first kid, I did a play, and it was a dark play, and I found myself coming home and kind of just having difficulty with negotiating my feelings about the play and my feelings about my family, and I felt very distant from my wife, and I wanted her to come to the play. She's like, I'm not coming to your play rehearsal, and just kind of like, I would just feel weird with the rehearsals all day. I would feel like I was doing these emotional things, and so I had to figure out a way to do that, and I realized that, yeah, maybe that would have happened back then if I had had a life to protect, but when you're single and it didn't really matter.
Mm-hmm. Was that a difficult character for you to portray, or was that fun because of how layered he was?
No, I think both, but definitely those characters are more stressful. You just hope you want to be interesting, and kind of those are the ones that stress me out more. And so it's nice to not have that as much with the comedy, so I don't bring it home. Like, so that kind of stuff I'd probably bring home more, in the sense that I'd come home and be like, all right, did I get everything I wanted? And I think that's also just par for the course when you're a supporting actor. You have 1 or 2 scenes in an episode, or one day or 2 days or whatever it is. So you have a lot more time to like dwell over those scenes. Whereas if you're the lead, you just come in and do it, and you don't have time to kind of overthink it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's a whole generation that still knows you from Clueless. I have to ask about Clueless.
Yeah.
I mean, do you still get references on the street to that all the time? Has the longevity of that movie surprised you in any way?
Yeah, they do. They come up to me, it's just rolling with the homies. They think they're so funny, and I'm like, I know, I sang it. And it's fun. I mean, I think it's great too. For a while, I thought they were making fun of me. Like before, a lot of actors don't make it. I'm very lucky to make it from being kind of more of a kid actor to then more adult roles. And I was just for some reason I thought that was a really bad thing, that if I wasn't able to transition and do an adult career, then there would be some kind of mocking behind the coming up to me and saying that. But of course now I realize that it's only good, and I'm very happy to be a part of something that people still watch. I mean, most of these movies I've done, like, nobody ever watched them. There's so many movies I've done, nobody's ever seen them, and so it's nice that they're still watching them.
One of the last times we talked, I think you said you hadn't rewatched it, revisited it in a while. Have you since then?
I don't think I've ever even seen the whole thing. I don't know why. Maybe I did, and I don't know. I think one of my friends at the time said I wasn't very good in it or something. I don't know. I have a real nervousness about watching anything from that time in my life, because it was just awkward and whatever. I mean, I don't know. So I keep thinking I'm going to, and I think at some point it might be a fun movie for my daughter or something. I guess, I don't know.
And you teamed up with Alicia again in season 1 of Suburgatory. How was it to work with her again after all those years?
Good. It made me feel old. Yeah, not because she seemed older, just because, when we were young, we were like at the beginning of our careers, and we were kind of like had a crush on each other, and I was married and she had a boyfriend, and then we were friends for a while, and then we'd watch each other from afar, and we'd have these little moments where it was like all this thing that's happened in your 20s you think are such big deals, and then now we have these kids, and we're like kind of laughing about it, and kind of hearing the real story about what was going on in her family, and the careers and all that weird stuff, and it takes on a different light. So that was kind of good for the perspective of it all, definitely.
Any chance she'll be back anytime soon, you think?
I don't think so. I think just by the nature of the characters being, it's just one of those girlfriends it's not going to happen again. It's just not right. You tried it and it's just not right. But I mean, who knows? Maybe she'll come back to Chatsworth in some way. But I don't think they're meant to be together.
All right. Well, we're going to open it up to a few audience questions in a little bit. I just wanted to ask too, we're going into season 3. I know they probably haven't told you much of anything, but is there something that you want to explore about George that maybe you haven't had a chance to in the last few years, something that you really think that we could explore a little more?
Well, I mean, I missed this last season. I missed dealing with the father-daughter stuff. That was, that's, obviously I'm very interested in that because my relationship with my own daughter, and so that's what originally attracted me to it, and so I'm excited that there is at least a focus on that right now, and so I don't know what within that relationship is going to be there, and I can't imagine writing it, or because I can't figure out what it would be, but so I am excited about getting back to that stuff.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, if you guys have any questions, we'll open it up right here.
Hi.
How did you get into acting, and where did you train? What styles did you train in?
Well, I was in Chicago, and my mom had moved me and my sister there, and she became an actress. Got a commercial agent, or back then you didn't have to be exclusive, so I guess the agents would have them all on the list, and part of that was driving around and giving cookies to the agencies and be like, hey, think of me, and so I spent a lot of years just by her side while she was reminding the agents to think of her, and at some point, I feel like I don't really remember, I was 6, I feel like it was, somebody was like, hey, does he want to audition for this role? And so me and my sister auditioned for a play, it was Tennessee Williams' last play, House Not Meant to Stand. We met him before he died, and we did that play at the Goodman Theater, and so that was pretty fun. And then I did plays growing up. That was a big part of my childhood, was doing these plays. I was kind of scared of kids my own age, and this was a good sort of, and I've worked with some kids since in plays, and it's for a kid who's kind of maybe doesn't fit in with his own kids. It's not a bad situation to be in these plays, not the rest of it, but the plays, And then I got a movie randomly at 16. Got very lucky with this Grand Canyon thing, and got an agent, and so was able to move out to LA and kind of have a head start. And then I couldn't get work for a while, so I started taking a bunch of different classes, and so I trained with different people for a couple of years at a time. But I would have to say overall, it was not very helpful. I thought I was learning at different times, and I did learn stuff, I guess, but just personally for me, I needed to not hear other people's voices in my head. Teachers, especially with acting, like that would shut me down, and so I wasn't as good when I was kind of like, I've never been as good when I've worked with a coach on something, because I'm there kind of like trying to do what the coach had in mind, and it doesn't ignite my own creativity. But I did train with a lot of very, very talented teachers and stuff throughout the years. A guy named John Len, who was pretty cool. He had a nice a style where you would do one character for 6 months, and every time you'd go up, you'd pick a different point in the character's life, like the 16th birthday, and then you'd create the circumstances. Then have people in the class play the dad and the sister, and you do these like half-an-hour improvs as the character, which in theory sounds awesome. It never worked for me. I would get up and have these just awkward improvs where nothing was said. It was just, and he wouldn't end it. He would never end it. It would take like half an hour, and but yeah. So, and then also just emotional recall and stuff. There's you go back and there's certain things that just don't work for you. It don't work for me, but I did it. I'd spend hours like sitting there and trying to remember. I think I can feel my face, and I don't know. And then sometimes I'd cry, but I was crying about just having to do that exercise, probably. And it was just, the whole thing was frustrating. But I stuck to it because I was really unclear on how doing this acting justified making money, and how I I was so afraid of not working that I wanted to. Just all the regular neuroses of an actor of choosing something so weird to do. So I did everything I could. I was very active about that, but ultimately I don't think it helped that much. Yeah. It's about a couple of brothers. It's a dramedy about this aging doubles player, myself, who loses his partner and nobody wants to partner. He's kind of a dick, and nobody wants to partner. Excuse my language. And nobody wants to partner with him, but he really doesn't want to give up. He loves the life. He travels around, just makes just enough for travel and hotel, and plays these tournaments, and kind of goes against all. It's kind of like lower class, kind of like white trash a little bit. He's very different than the rest of the league, and goes against all the manners of the game, and he goes and he asks his estranged brother to make a run with him, who he used to play with and he abandoned a long time ago, and so it's about their coming together as brothers, and yeah, it's been something I've been trying to put together for many years. I had different companies, and was very lucky. Met a woman who knew a guy, and now we've got a little bit of money, just a little bit less than we need to actually make the movie, but we're going to do it anyway. And it's been a fun process because, like I was saying with TV and with anything, if it's another person's project, I want them to be happy, and that sometimes means I'm not going to be happy. But this, I really get to die by my own sword, and now we have a director, and so it becomes more of a thing. But so I'm excited about whatever it's going to be, but I'm also excited about, like, on TV, especially a comedy, you feel like you have to fill every moment, and it's maybe harder work than something like this, even though something like this is more what I'm attracted to. So I'm kind of preparing myself for feeling like I'm not doing a lot, and being okay with that, because a lot of the things I like to watch take a lot more time and breathe a lot more, and so I'm really scared about the tennis stuff. I've been training my ass off. And I'm just very, and I'm very nervous to have to be, because I never played sports. I was always on the bench on teams of sports, so I just have a fear of, like, getting up there and then my body not working, and so. But other than that, the other side, the acting part of the movie, I'm very excited about. And, yeah. Thank you for asking. Yeah. It kind of just depends on the thing. Like Law and Order, like, I'm not a very tough guy. I'm not. I mean, if there's a body around, I might go and look, but I'm not gonna want to put gloves on, and I don't want to talk to the guy. Like, if there's somebody there that might be a criminal, I definitely don't want to talk to him. But then I just go and hit my marks and kind of pretend I'm that guy. So that's not that difficult for a show like that. It's I just kind of pretend I am that, and fortunately somebody else writes what I have to say too. Because if I had to come up with it, I'd be like, I'm gonna go. And that it's just similar to myself. I mean, I guess I would say that I just try to find something that I am, that I do relate to, that does feel like side of me, or but miscasting is a huge, that's how bad performances are born, and in performances that I've done that I haven't been happy in, it's because I ignored my own instinct that I'm not going to be right in this. I'm not going to, it's too different than me, or words just don't feel right to me, or something, I really want to be able to do it, but so I don't know. I mean, but there's so many different kinds of actors. But for me, I would say, as long as there's something I can hold on to that feels like, all right, I get where this thing comes from, then I just kind of hold on to that, So. I'm always trying to think of ways to let them not let them have them let me not shave. I hate to shave, and I just am always like, I think goatee is really, and I come with like different like ideas, creative ideas when I hate to shave, and but the goatee was along those lines, and this is for my next character. I have a whole bullshit excuse for why I do that. Director's bodish. She is she started late, and I don't know. I mean, when we first came out here, she did an independent movie that she got, and she was the star of, and she was amazing in, and like she got these amazing reviews, and somehow that didn't quite transition into a career. I mean, it's a stupid business, really. I mean, the whole thing is what's that? Yeah, so much luck and timing. I mean, but for me, I was like, oh, this is great, and I'd call people, and it's so weird as an actor, like, even if you're doing well, it's like agents so often don't want to hear your recommendations, and if it's family, it's even worse. It's like they're immediately like, oh, okay, yeah, and but she still does it. She does commercials and so yeah. I mean, it's still there, and it could come back around. She's been writing a lot, and she just wrote and starred in this short film that she was amazing in, and they're creative people. Her and my stepdad are kind of similar, and they creative people, and they it's. But it's hard. I always find it very hard to watch anyone else I care about in this business, because it's, I hope my kids aren't involved in it, because it's just so insulting, like to reject my mom and like, or someone you love. I was with girlfriends and they'd come home like sad because some dude didn't like them, and I'd be like, the whole thing is just it's so weird. It's a weird choice, but there's the upside, and I think if you have that creative thing, then it's obvious. I understand why we're drawn to. Oh, are the Gyllenhaals? Oh, I didn't know that. I've met Jake. I sat next to Jeremy Piven at a screening, and he texted the whole time. I was like, really? You're still texting? What's that? Yeah, I hope not.
We have time for a few more. I'll go right there.
Curious how, during the lulls in your career, how have you found ways to get through that, or stay motivated to be in the game, or have you had that point like, I don't know.
Yeah. I did. I always do. I did like small plays, 50-seat houses. I did like a one-man sort of play, because I just felt like I got to just do it. I have a lot of friends who are in that place of like, and yet even if you hate it, which I don't love doing plays. I do one every couple of years, and because I forget that I don't love it in that couple of years. I love it for the first 4 weeks or 3 weeks, and then I'm like, 8 shows this week again tonight, the same freaking play. Maybe I haven't done an amazing play. That could be it. But I even if I hate it, I'm saying I'm an actor. I'm gonna just do. There's enough stuff out here to just do, and so for me, I would do that. It was like I always had something to prove, So I imagine that in future lulls, I'll do similar kind of experimental sort of things. Yeah, I mean, I've had a few people kind of that I like or work with have wanted to do that Tennessee Williams play, Streetcar. Yeah, so I've always thought that could be cool, but I don't know how to play them. But we might have fun.
I think one more right here.
Have you ever found yourself
Yeah. Well, what happened? I guess I did some like a bunch of studio movies when I was around Clueless, but they were all kind of not successful except for Clueless, and then I was having trouble getting work, and then 6 Feet Under came around, and so then that was the biggest kind of typecasting thing for a while. But it wasn't horrible, but it was just like people saw me as a crazy guy, as a mentally ill person, and so it was a little more difficult for them to like buy me as not a mentally ill guy, and so I guess that, but it was a welcome typecasting because I knew it was memorable, and that was the first time I was like, okay, that gives me some kind of thing to hold on to, like. When it ended, this guy Jason Smilovic, these producers cast me in that show Kidnapped, which was I was like a detective-y kind of guy, and that was cool because I was never cast in those kind of roles before. I was just didn't seem too young or whatever, and so then that gave me the Law and Order. I got Law and Order from that, and then this was kind of a fluke. I think Emily really liked Clueless too, so she, I found out she hired Alicia, and so, that came back around in a interesting way. So I didn't have to. I tried to get into comedy, but I didn't get it. So I would do little videos with my friends, but that was just for fun, and that apparently helped me get this comedy too. But I wouldn't say it was overtly intentional.
Well, thank you, Jeremy. This has been
Thank
a
you.
great evening. Let's give it up,
Thank you
Jeremy
guys so
Sisto.
much. Thank you.